All right, taking a live look inside the Vatican right now as the conclave is starting to get underway this morning. The Cardinals are all taking part in this long tradition of choosing the next pope. They are going to sequester themselves in just a moment. This is a live look right now in St. Peter's Basilica where they're all taking an oath ahead of the sequestering themselves ahead of the conclave.
And this is really fascinating because this is the only time you're going to see the cameras in here seeing these cardinals, of course, before that voting gets underway. Then it becomes super secretive. We get kicked out and we no longer get a look until they pick their successor. The conclave, of course, meeting to choose the successor of Pope Francis, who died just last month. Joining us this morning to explain more about the conclave, we have Christy Cobb, who is an associate professor of Christianity at DU. Christy, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you we have so many questions about this. We're so fascinated. What happens before voting begins?
All right, so they're taking the oath right now, and the next thing that will happen is that they'll go into St. Peter's Basilica and they'll participate in Mass. And so they have one of the cardinals will give a message that they'll listen to, and then they'll move into the Sistine Chapel, which is where the conclave officially begins.
What is the oath that they're taking right now?
Oh yes, right now the oath that they're taking is to promise that if they were elected pope, that they would accept the responsibilities.
Interesting.
So they all are taking that?
Yes.
Interesting.
Right?
Because you don't know.
Right, and I was saying, so one of these cardinals will be the next pope, or it could be someone else?
Yeah, I mean, technically, then the rules, it can be any baptized male over 18 years old. But historically, it has been a cardinal from within the conclave that will be chosen.
So how does the voting process work? How do they pick among each other?
Yes, so they sit down at the table, they're given a piece of paper, and they have to write down the name of the cardinal that they believe should be, that they believe God is telling them should be pope. They fold the ballot twice, right? Oh, they're also supposed to anonymize their handwriting, if possible. So it's a very secretive process. And they fold the ballot twice, and then as their names are called, they walk forward in the Sistine Chapel, and they place their vote into a chalice. And as they place their vote, they also give that oath that this is the person that they believe God is saying to them should be elected pope.
Fascinating. We never get to see this happen, but we have seen reality shows still this very thing. I was like, I'm pretty sure Survivor does the exact same thing.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. That's very interesting.
So they fold it twice. They try to write maybe with the opposite hand or something like that.
Right.
Right? Like that is so weird.
Fascinating. So weird. I actually am able to change my handwriting. We've seen that happen, well, depending on how I write. So, but it's interesting that they're expected to do that. That's crazy.
Okay, so in the past, I know we've talked about how sometimes this takes about 2 days.
Yes.
But do you think that this time around, it seems like everything is so divisive. And do you think this is going to take longer?
You know, I don't. I still think it will probably take a day or two. The cardinals have come together, in pre-conclave meetings, and they've been, trying to display unity. And so I think that they're attempting to show that they're going to come together and choose the person, and hopefully in a couple of days.
But to Corey's point right there, we have seen a little bit of a division between kind of the newer school Catholics and still more of the traditional Catholics right there. Do they have to kind of try to plead their case to each other to win over votes?
Well, they do have informal conversations between votes, right? And they certainly have, there's certainly that aspect of the political nature, right, of that, where, but also a number of cardinals have sort of already risen to the top of the choices. And so I think a lot of the buzz around who might be pope has already happened before the conclave.
Are they like campaigning ahead of
But that's what I'm wondering.
Are they
I'm with you.
with like one another?
They're not technically supposed to be campaigning, but I think there's a little bit of that discussion inside of the conclave.
Okay, so Professor Cobb, you said that typically it takes about 2 days historically for them to decide. We got to wait to see the white smoke come up. That officially means they're no longer burning those ballots, right?
So they will burn the ballots. They add a chemical to it to make the smoke turn white or to turn black.
Okay, I did not know that.
Okay.
Yes.
Last question. Once they pick who the next pope will be, what does that process look like?
Oh, this is fascinating. The first thing that the cardinal who is elected pope has to do is choose a name. So after they accept that they are going to be pope, they choose their name. And this is really important because it signals to the world what their values as pope will be. So they'll choose their name, and then they're taken back to a room, often called the room of tears, because so many newly elected popes are overcome by emotion with the weight of that responsibility. They're taken into there, and they're dressed in the papal vestments. Yeah. Interestingly, inside of that room, there are 3 sizes, so that any pope will be able to fit their new attire. And then they're brought back into the Sistine Chapel, where the cardinals will revere them and celebrate them as the new pope. And then they're introduced to the world.
Wow.
And that's the moment that we're probably familiar with,
yes,
where the new pope comes to the balcony at St. Peter's Basilica.
This is so interesting. Thank you so much for coming in. Professor Cobb is going to be sticking around with us for the next 2 days, answering all of our questions.
Did you just sign her up for that?
She didn't know
Apparently.
it. Yeah, we're not letting her leave until they pick a new pope. Professor Cobb, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.